Sugarcoating reality, the art of euphemisms. We've all done it. We dance around unpleasant truths with softer, gentler words. These linguistic fig leaves, my friends, are euphemisms. They're the verbal equivalent of air freshener, masking the stink, but not really dealing with the source. Euphemisms can be polite, sure, but they can also be seriously misleading. Think about it. We use them for everything from bodily functions to death and destruction. Why do we do it? Well, sometimes it's about sparing feelings, other times it's about sanitizing reality, making the harsh and uncomfortable more palatable. But there's a danger lurking beneath these seemingly innocuous word swaps. George Carlin, calling out the bull. Nobody skewered the absurdities of language quite like the late, great George Carlin. This comedic genius ripped into euphemisms with the ferocity of a honey badger in a balloon factory. He knew that language could be used to manipulate, to obfuscate, to downright lie. Carlin understood that euphemisms could be used to sanitize the horrors of war, to downplay corporate greed, to make the unacceptable seem almost reasonable. He called them out for what they were, attempts to control our perceptions and our reactions. And he did it with a wicked sense of humor that made you think, even as you were laughing your ass off. From restroom to collateral damage. Euphemisms in our midst. Euphemisms are everywhere. They are the sugar coating on the bitter pill of reality, the linguistic camouflage that softens the harshness of truth. They're like linguistic cockroaches. You try to stamp them out, but they just keep coming back. No matter how hard we try to avoid them, they scuttle back into our conversations, making the uncomfortable more palatable. We use them when we talk about going to the bathroom, because restroom sounds so much more inviting than toilet. The word restroom conjures images of a serene place to relax, while toilet is stark and unappealing. We use them to describe people who are unemployed. Job seeker sounds so much more proactive than out of work. Job seeker implies a sense of purpose and action, whereas unemployed can feel like a label of failure. And then there are the euphemisms used in the corridors of power. In the world of politics, euphemisms are a tool of the trade, a way to obscure the truth and manipulate public perception. Politicians are masters of this art. They craft their language carefully, using euphemisms to soften the blow of their policies and decisions. They talk about enhanced interrogation techniques when they mean torture. This phrase is designed to make the brutal sound clinical and acceptable. They talk about collateral damage when they mean innocent civilians killed in military strikes. This term distances us from the human cost of conflict, making it easier to digest. It's enough to make you want to reach for a barf bag, or maybe just a nausea receptacle. Euphemisms are a double-edged sword. They can provide comfort, but they can also obscure the truth, making it harder to confront reality. In education, we talk about special needs instead of disabilities, aiming to highlight the unique requirements of each student rather than focusing on their limitations. In the corporate world, we hear about downsizing instead of layoffs, a term that attempts to soften the blow of job loss by making it sound like a strategic business decision. In healthcare, we refer to end-of-life care instead of dying, a phrase that aims to provide a sense of dignity and compassion during a difficult time. Even in environmental discussions, we use terms like climate change instead of global warming, a phrase that sounds less alarming and more manageable. Euphemisms are woven into the fabric of our daily lives, shaping the way we perceive and discuss the world around us. They can be a powerful tool for empathy and understanding, but they can also be a barrier to facing the truth head-on. So next time you hear a euphemism, take a moment to consider what it's really saying. Behind the gentle words, there's often a reality that's much harder to face. Shell shock versus PTSD, the evolution of a condition. The journey of understanding psychological trauma has been long and complex. Let's rewind the clock for a moment. World War I, a time when the world was engulfed in unprecedented conflict and chaos. Soldiers returning from the trenches, haunted by the horrors they'd witnessed, were diagnosed with shell shock. This term was coined to describe the intense psychological distress that many soldiers experienced. It was a raw, visceral term that captured the psychological trauma they endured. The thousand-yard stare, the haunted eyes, the inability to escape the battlefield in their minds. But over time, that term evolved. As our understanding of psychological trauma deepened, so did the language we use to describe it. It became combat fatigue during World War II and the Korean War. This new term reflected a broader understanding of the psychological toll of combat, not just the immediate shock of battle. Then, in the aftermath of Vietnam, it morphed into post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This term aimed to encompass the long-lasting effects of trauma, recognizing that the impact of war could linger for years, even decades. Each iteration of the term, while seemingly more scientific and less dramatic, also seemed to distance us from the raw, human experience of trauma. The clinical language, while important for diagnosis and treatment, sometimes obscured the personal suffering behind the terms. It's as if we were trying to sanitize the wounds of war, to make them more palatable for polite company. But behind every term, every diagnosis, there are real people with real stories of pain, resilience, and recovery. The evolution of these terms reflects our growing understanding of trauma, but also our ongoing struggle to fully grasp its impact on the human soul. The fog of language, how euphemisms cloud our understanding. Here's the thing about euphemisms. They can create a dangerous distance between us and the realities they're trying to mask. They can lull us into a false sense of comfort, preventing us from fully grasping the gravity of a situation. When we sanitize language, we risk sanitizing our understanding of the issues at hand. Think about the language used to describe poverty. We talk about low-income communities or the economically disadvantaged. These terms, while well-intentioned, can feel abstract and impersonal. They can make it easier to ignore the faces behind the statistics, the human cost of economic inequality. Downsizing and other everyday absurdities. Look, I get it, sometimes we need euphemisms to navigate the awkwardness of social situations, but other times they're just plain ridiculous. Take the corporate world, for example. Companies don't fire people anymore, they downsize, right-size, or engage in workforce optimization. It's enough to make you want to scream. And don't even get me started on the euphemisms for death. We've got passing away, kicking the bucket, going to a better place, the list goes on and on. It's like we're trying to outrun the Grim Reaper with clever wordplay. Language and support for veterans, a call to action. The way we talk about war and its impact matters. The words we choose can either honor the sacrifices made by our veterans or diminish their experiences. When we use sanitized language to describe the experiences of veterans, we risk minimizing their sacrifices and the invisible wounds they carry. These wounds are not just physical but emotional and psychological, often manifesting as PTSD, anxiety, and depression. We need to be mindful of the language we use when discussing issues like PTSD. It's not just a term, it's a reality that affects countless veterans every day. By acknowledging the severity of these conditions, we can foster a more supportive environment. We need to listen to veterans, to hear their stories, and to use language that honors their experiences. Their narratives are powerful and deserve to be told with respect and empathy. Listening is the first step towards understanding and healing. We need to support organizations that provide mental health services to veterans struggling with the invisible wounds of war. These organizations play a crucial role in offering the care and support that veterans need to rebuild their lives. And we need to hold our leaders accountable for the decisions they make that send our men and women into harm's way. It's not just about policy, it's about the lives that are affected by these decisions. We must advocate for responsible leadership and policies that prioritize the well-being of our service members. Our veterans have given so much for our country. It's our duty to ensure they receive the recognition, support, and care they deserve. By coming together as a community, we can make a difference in their lives. Let's take action today. Whether it's through volunteering, advocating for better policies, or simply listening to a veteran's story, every effort counts. Together, we can create a more supportive and understanding world for our veterans. Words matter, be mindful, be critical. So, what's the takeaway here? Euphemisms are everywhere. They're baked into our language, but we don't have to be passive consumers of words. We can be more mindful of the language we use and the language used around us. We can ask questions. We can challenge euphemisms that obscure the truth. We can demand clarity and honesty from our leaders and from each other. Join the conversation. Subscribe for more. Want more insights on language, culture, and the absurdities of modern life? Subscribe to our channel and join the conversation. We're here to make you think, laugh, and maybe even question everything you thought you knew.